Hi, it's Jen. I'm doing another Let's Play First Impressions video of a game called Your Story. It appears that this game was also made in Ren'Py, so I'm really excited to see what this creator did. As I've said before in my other videos, this is just going to be a First Impressions video, so I will be focusing more on things like presentation, just overall how I feel about it, which is usually more about like the overall aesthetic. And yeah, let's get into it. Already I've loaded up the game, and it has a lovely soundtrack in the opening. It really gives that feeling of kind of like high fantasy, and I'm a big fan of high fantasy, so I'm excited to delve right into this. Right here we've got the menu on the side. This is a free demo version, and I will leave a link in the description below for those who would like to try downloading it and playing the game or the demo version for free. Let's just take a quick look, and I feel a little bit less guilty that I didn't go through and customize my my text and my music parameters and things, because it looks like this person did not either. I think it's clean and functional. I think the default for what Ren'Py gives you for these options is more than adequate. It's totally fine with me. I like it. Was turning down the volume just a smidge. This is a really lovely little text box here. I really like this roses motif. I think the color palette for this character artwork and the text template work really well. The font is very clean, very legible. These options down here, little small, a little harder to read. I do like the way that the icons light up when you hover over them. This is always a little bit challenging too. I've written some high fantasy before. Oh, this is nice, very subtle effect. These kind of like particles here are kind of moving around a little bit. Some of the interesting things about the dialogue is when I was writing a high fantasy story, I tend to hear the characters' voices in my mind, and it tends to sound a little bit like awkward when it's written out, because they don't speak in a way that like modern people speak. And so it's like trying to find a balance between like making the character's expression like relatable and not too difficult to read, as opposed to like kind of immersing yourself in like a different I guess a different time. So like when she said like this sucks, it kind of like really stood out to me, and I'm like, that's an interesting choice. Like I wonder if she's going to speak with just a more modern kind of voice, or if they're gonna go more with kind of like a high fantasy aesthetic, that like a high fantasy dialogue that kind of like matches the overall aesthetic. It doesn't bother me. It's just an interesting choice, and it's something that like if you plan on doing high fantasy, like you'll have to like make that conscious decision for yourself as well. Let's be active. Let's go do something that always makes you feel better when you're feeling kind of hum going outside. This feels very much like a kind of like a storybook right now, the overall like feel of it. I think it would be nice to just put a little bit more of this kind of like yellowy green, just smatter it in there somewhere, so that the foreground and the background just have a little bit more cohesiveness. Either that, or you could just add just a little bit of like bright, a little bit of red for like some little flower buds or something, just to kind of like tie these two elements together. See, already like this has a little bit more of a pleasing tie into like the foreground and the characters, I think. I think it's interesting that they chose to just have like you are the one who is narrating when you know, there's an established voice that like is the character of like you. I don't know if I quite agree with that. I think it would be nice to either give the player a choice to insert their name. Even then, it gets a little confusing here where there's no indication that this is a narrator. I feel like having you and a narrator is a little bit... I feel like you kind of takes a role of like a narrator, but I guess like it's like more like the label you is assigned when like the narrator is kind of like speaking directly with the character. I don't know, it's a little confusing. I think I have to go back and I need to read it a little more slowly. I think this is a good choice here too. Although I think that this kind of fade here, I think it would be better. My personal preference is if it like this didn't taper over where this this kind of branch-like border is. Like I find it a little bit weird that it kind of like extends past it. And I know when you have the default GUI with RenPy, it has something kind of like this faded edge border. I think that you could either bring that in a little bit to match up with the edge of these kind of like branch borders, or I think you could just kind of give it more of a clean edged cut. Like I don't know, that faded tapering past like the border looks a little bit odd to me. Yeah, even just making it something more like this, where it's more just like kind of like this soft fuzzy edge, but it doesn't really go beyond the branch border too much. And I don't know if you need to have that narration like, oh, she yelled. Like, I think that could be obvious just in what she's saying, or having capitalized font, or you could do a transition with the appearance of the text to make it like kind of like jostle as it comes in. I feel like, well, I'm gonna continue reading and then I'll finish that thought. Yeah, it's just I think I'm a little bit confused by it. Like it feels like at times like it's kind of reading a script, and then sometimes it feels like it's reading a novel, and then sometimes it feels like it's reading a visual novel. Like it's just a little bit, I find the writing a little bit off-putting, and not so much like what is being said, but how it's being said. Like, I don't think it's very effective to have somebody saying, she said this in this type of tone. Like, I think that having their name in the upper register here says that she said it, and then, like, their expression should just be able to show you how she's saying it, because saying that she said it a certain way and then having her actually say it is just kind of redundant, and it feels like it's not fully taking advantage of the visual novel medium. But all these colors are very lovely. I really like the way, like if you were just to take a screenshot of just this one scene, I like the way the colors with the background and the text plate look. Like not everything has to match exactly. Like this doesn't have to be the same shades of red or anything, but I think like having some sparsity of like that higher saturation color in there is kind of like a nice balance as to having just like one kind of more flat tone. Like I think there are ways to like kind of bring them together. Like here's like kind of like smattering of this like this same color red and kind of similar kinds of greens in the back here that just kind of help draw everything together. It doesn't have to be much. And I really like the lighting too in that illustration. I really like the soundtrack too. I think this is an interesting style. I come more from a comic book animation background, and a lot of my work was in black and white, and so I am like very much like color is more of an afterthought for me, something that I kind of had to like work at, like trying to get better at, still working at. And I'm more heavily focused on lines. So seeing a style where they have made a conscious choice to like basically get rid of as much line as possible, I think is interesting. And I think that there's enough contrast in the shadows, and there's enough texture that was left in the color to kind of like to be able to get rid of the lines without it feeling like it's just like a giant, you know, airbrush. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's definitely just my aesthetic preference, but I don't find that this style of artwork falls under that kind of like fuzzy airbrush feel, because you can look at it and see that they did not overly blend everything to make everything like kind of like a soft, like just like there's different consistencies. I like that you can see like the textures, that they left it kind of a rougher feel around the edges, and I like that they did decide to like highlight certain areas like the eyes, certain areas of detailed interest where they go very heavy with the shadows, and they leave certain areas with hard edged shadows, because in real life, you know, there are hard-edged shadows. We don't live in a world when we're looking around, everything is perfectly blended to a fuzzy edge, right? Which sometimes can happen when you look at computer coloring, especially because you know, it's very easy to go in there with a tool and like zoom in and kind of get carried away with all like the trying to blend things softly. So I really appreciate that this art style, that they left a lot of texture. They kept some hard-edged shadows, and they gave me enough contrast, enough visual contrast to make it very like interesting. And also importantly, when you zoom out of these kind of images, you can still see like details and shadows, versus if there wasn't enough contrast between some of like the shadows and the texture. Then when you zoom out of those images, they tend to look very just like kind of muddy overall. I'm a firm believer and always like telling the truth. This is cool though. I like this this mini game. It's for oh, I thought I could kind of control. Wait, I guess I can kind of control. It's one click and then it like swipes. Okay, I get it. Let's do a thorough job here. I like that. That's cute. Little mini game there, nice. I really like the soundtrack to this so far too. Nice little camera zoom in. There's like pans earlier too, which was nice. Well, I think this kind of gives me an overall like first impression. Like I was saying before, I think I need to like kind of go through it again and reread some of the dialogue a little bit more closely to kind of, I guess, understand a little bit more of like the role of like the narrator and kind of where this I guess observing dialogue is coming from, and how you as a player kind of like follow in that. And again, here I think when you have like anything in quotations because it's a character thinking it or saying it, I think you could just have them up here, have their name up here, and have their thought like italicized or in some kind of like parentheses or something. And I think it would be pretty obvious that like she wasn't just like saying it out loud for all of these other people to comment on it. Like if it's written in a different font, or you know, there's some kind of indication that separates it from like what she normally would say. Just the fact that like nobody else is like kind of reacting to her saying it, I think would give it away that she's like thinking it. Alright, well, thanks for joining me in this. I will leave the link in the description below if you'd like to try it. And as always, enjoy the process. Bye now.